McCaffrey. I'm an account manager at Sherpa Marketing. And I'm not going to tell you about how I got here or what we do or any of that. Instead, I'd like to give you a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at what we do every day as we try to take on the challenge of measuring marketing. And measuring marketing, it can seem a little bit like an impossible mission. Now, I know that there's a lot of skeptics out there in the crowd that are probably thinking to yourselves, what's the big deal? I mean, we have Google Analytics. Our click-through rate was 2.2% last year, right? We can measure marketing. It's simple. Well, friends, it is simple, but it is a little bit more involved than that. When we talk about measurable marketing, what we're trying to accomplish is telling you when you put $100 towards a campaign, you're going to get $150 back in profit at the end, or $50, or $0, whatever it is. Calculating that is the first step to being successful with your marketing campaigns and understanding where your marketing budget is going. So, keeping with the Mission Impossible theme, I'm going to take the next 2 or 3 hours and just explain to you guys. Sorry, it's not 3 hours. How long? 20 minutes. Okay. Well, I've got some good news and bad news. The bad news is I've got a lot of Tom Cruise slides that I can't show you anymore. The good news is I'm going to start the story somewhere a little bit more practical. So one of the questions I get asked pretty often as a marketer is how much should I spend in marketing? And guess what? It's a new number, 7 to 8%. So you can do all the research you want. You can get all sorts of industry reports and expert opinions and industry averages. They're going to give you all sorts of different numbers, and that's fine. But there's a place that I'm going to tell you that you can put those numbers, and that place is precisely in the dustbin, as it were. This is what matters. What matters is what will yield the maximum net return. What will yield the maximum net return? Now, obviously this is right. I mean, you're going to do the thing that's the best to do for your business. It's kind of saying that. So it is right. The challenge with it is that you could argue that it might fall into the classic statements such as, or maybe even, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being aspirational, setting a goal, even if it's a little bit abstract or not well defined. But in order to measure it and know whether you succeeded in achieving that goal or failed, which is important, you need to figure out how to measure it. So if we're talking about maximizing net return, this is what we care about as marketers, maximizing net return. We know what maximize is, that's easy. Net return, this is where the magic starts to happen. So you can look at return in a couple of different ways, as a percentage, as a dollar value. So I mean, if you say I'm investing $100 in marketing and it returns $150 in profit, you can calculate that a couple different ways. And so the formulas are there. It's pretty simple. There's only 2 variables, investment and profit. The investment is pretty simple. We know what we spent on marketing. We know that what we spent on ads. We know what we spent to get the ads built. We know what our internal costs were to build those ads. That's pretty easy to get that information together. Profit is where some of the challenge starts to come in. And the reason for that, and this is of course profit attributable to the marketing campaign, not just your total bottom line. So the reason that it's so complicated is because when you pull a report, generally speaking, you're looking at something like this, right? So I challenge any of you to find where profit is on these graphs. You can look all day in Google Analytics and other tools like that, and you won't find it. You'll get all sorts of interesting metrics, all sorts of things that help you analyze a campaign, and they're useful. They're useful in optimizing a campaign. They're useful in kind of understanding what's happening and how people are using your website. But to be honest, when we're trying to measure marketing return, profit, there's kind of one thing that is Mission Impossible themed that I can do. So when you kind of cut the chaff a little bit, you get down to what really matters. If you're looking at things like profit, qualified leads, opportunities, even email subscribers. If I were to say to you, what is a qualified lead worth to your business? You'd probably be able to give me, maybe not an exact answer, maybe you would, but at least you'd be able to get probably pretty close. You understand kind of your pipeline. When you have a lead, How often do they convert? What's a customer worth? That kind of stuff. You can figure it out when you get down to these kind of metrics. So this is where we want to focus and spend our time. So in the simplest sense, if you have an e-commerce site, sorry, I'm going to actually start with the sales funnel. So no matter where you sit, we all start with customers who don't know us and we don't know them. And then all of a sudden, we've touched that customer. So they've seen an ad, they've driven by your business and seen your sign, they've heard about you. Then they become a lead. Now maybe they've visited your website and you know that they were there. There's a bit of a two-way interaction. Then they become a qualified lead. Now maybe they filled out a form on your website. Prospect, now maybe a salesperson has contacted them. High potential prospect, now maybe you put out a quote for tender for them. So I mean, this sales funnel, it's going to be different for every business. You have to build one for yourselves. I highly encourage you all to do that. It's really important, and it's often overlooked, and it's relatively easy to do. You just think about what's the customer's path to purchase. What are all the steps from them not even knowing about you all the way over to becoming a customer? And if you map that out, that's the first step. So an example from the world's second largest hammock distribution company, Bevere, right? So let's say they had a marketing campaign out there and spent $150 to put some ads out there, and they got me. I clicked on one of the ads and I came to their site and I browsed through all the hammocks and I found my dream hammock, if that's even a thing. And I go to the checkout page and I place my order. All right, so I've registered a sale for Bevere, right? I've spent $400 on their site, and they can trace that back to the ad that brought me there, right? So to calculate the ROI, it's pretty simple. We have a sale value of $400. Let's suppose that the gross margin is 50%. So the profit is half of $400, $200, and then we said we spent $150. So we just plug in those numbers. So we have the profit of $200 minus the $150 on the top, divided by the investment on the bottom. So 50 divided by 150, we get a return of 33% or $50 if you're measuring it by dollar value. So I will caution you that there's the two different methods of measuring return. Both of them are useful. Both of them are important, and you can't ignore one and just go with one and not the other. What is not in the scope of this presentation is helping you evaluate a marketing spend versus some other spend. So like you could spend $100,000 in marketing, or you could maybe hire 2 salespeople, or maybe you could invest in some piece of technology that helps your business save money, or maybe in R&D. Those things all have to be evaluated independently, and you can do a cost-benefit analysis and evaluate the return of those investments separately. But from a marketing perspective, this is kind of table stakes. You need to know what your marketing is doing for you. Okay? So I like to draw a bit of an analogy to an imaginary land where Arthur lives, a good friend of mine. Now, Arthur, when he goes to school every morning, I don't know if you know this, he takes his bike to the subway, and then he takes the subway down to the old walking path, and then he finishes his journey on foot to school. That's how he gets to school every morning. And if you asked Arthur how he gets to school every morning, I can tell you he wouldn't say that he walks to school. And yet, he would say he bikes and then takes the subway and then walks. And yet when we think often about measuring marketing, we're often thinking about just the last click. Like, what was the ad that made the sale? What was the last thing they did? We knew they clicked on the ad and they bought something, or they did something else. The whole customer journey matters. And so in order to measure those early steps in the customer journey, we need to get a little bit more creative. And we need to go a little bit further back in the sales funnel and measure what's called micro conversions. Now, the steps here are mapping out your path to purchase. That's the sales funnel that we just had up there. And you have to identify the micro conversions and then assign a dollar value to the micro conversions. What am I talking about? What am I saying? Okay, I'll show you. Barkman Concrete, one of the country's leading precast concrete manufacturers. Beautiful product. They don't do e-commerce. They sell through a network of distributors, retailers, Home Depot, Rona. So on their website, it's not quite as simple for them to just measure a $400 sale like you could on a previous website. here what we have to do is we have to identify these micro conversions. What are the things that a customer can do on the site that make you think or are indicative that that person might be a future customer, and then assign a dollar value to that. So here's how that works. So let's say I come to the site from an ad, and I click on Find a Dealer, and I go to this page, I type in my postal code, and I click on one of the pins and get directions to the dealer. I didn't necessarily buy anything, but I did something that was indicative that I might be a customer. And so these are what I mean by micro conversions. So when you plot this on your sales funnel, it might go somewhere like that. So the next step is to calculate the average value of a customer. We're going to be back to the sales funnel in a second. So there's a couple different ways to do this, and they all work out to the same thing. In this example, you take the average profit per transaction times the repeat purchases per year times the customer life cycle. So how much did they spend, how many times did they spend it per year, times how many years is that customer with you. Another way to think about it, how much do you make on average per customer per year, and then how many years is the customer with you. Not every business even has customer life cycle. Like it might just be a single one-off transaction, and then the second number there is just a 1. It's all about just figuring out how this works for your business and calculating the average lifetime value of a customer. That's the first step in the sales funnel. So let's say for Barkman that the average profit per year was $2,000 and the average customer sticks around for 5 years. So we got an average customer value of $10,000. So back to the sales funnel, we plug that in for the average value of a customer. Now we have to just measure what does it take to get from here to a customer. So if we define this step as find a dealer, so they've clicked on the dealer on the page, and then the next step as visit a dealer in store. So those are probably the next steps, right? You go to the website, you find the right dealer, then you go to the store, and then you become a customer. Those are the steps. So if we assign some kind of reasonable percentage to what we think would happen, I'm not that company, and we haven't done the research, but if we had, or if we had some experience, we could say, let's say 20% of the time when somebody clicks a pin, they actually go to the store. And then let's say 10% of the time when they actually go to the store after clicking a pin, they actually buy something. So with some really quick, simple math, we can see that 2% of the times that people click the pin, they're becoming a customer. You can kind of see how this is one example, but you see how this would roll out to other examples. So what is the value of clicking a pin? $10,000 times 20% times 10%. Every time someone clicks a pin, your business essentially is profiting $200. It's pretty cool, pretty powerful. I'll show you another example. Let's say you're an auto dealer who sells this car. I go to the website, after seeing an ad, let's say, I come here and I fill out the form. I want to get more info on the car. So I fill out the form, click submit, we measure that. Back to the sales funnel, where does that fall in? Let's say it falls in here. So on the bottom you can see ask a question, find a dealer, visit a dealer in store. Let's say those are the steps we define as the customer's path to purchase. Same kind of thing. We assign a dollar value for our average customer value of lifetime, and then we work from the sales funnel to identify what percent of the time does someone who asks a question find a dealer, what percent of the time does someone find a dealer, go to the store, what percent of the time does someone who goes to the store buy the thing, right? This can be applied to any micro conversion that you identify on your site. And you can get a calculation of what any of those actions is worth with this really simple math. It's not rocket science. It just takes a little bit of work. What we're doing is we're measuring marketing based on sales or on funnel value. So what we just described, what we talked about, was how to calculate your funnel value for all these micro conversions. Okay? And there's all kinds of ways to measure it. So, Google Analytics is the most simple way. You can use that to track website activity. Google Tag Manager, you can use for things like clicking on a button or watching a video if you identify those as conversions. And then CallRail, you can actually use this software to track a phone call. And so if I clicked on an ad and then I see a phone number there, you can insert a dynamically generated phone number that ties that person to that ad. So you can track it that way. The point here, I'm not going to get into the minutia of how to do it, but there's tools out there, all kinds of free resources, and all kinds of smart people that can help you do that if you just identify what you want to track. And setting it up, once you have it set up, it just runs itself and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So negative Nancy's among the room might say something like, it sounds like a lot of guesswork, right? Like we just plugged in numbers for Barkman and for the car dealership, 50%, 10%, who knows? And I'd say to that, it is kind of that way at first. But you identify, you can do like a high and low. Maybe it's 10% to 20%, and we're confident in that number. Or you can, if you're really not confident in a number, you can find a way to do some research. Maybe go stand in the store and just like watch customers buy concrete for a day and see how many pick up your product versus competitors. All these things can help you kind of collect some real data that can help you refine these numbers a little bit more and make these analytics that much more powerful. And then I would also say, which of these questions seems more answerable? These are long questions. What's the return on investment of our marketing budget last year? It's a big question, right? That's what I'm trying to answer in this presentation. Or, how often does someone go into the store after clicking on the pin thing, right? So one simple thing, if you can break it into a lot of those simple things, collect data, try to figure it out, try to get closer, now all of a sudden answering this big question doesn't seem so daunting. And ultimately you want to get to a place, something like this, where you have your sales funnel mapped out, right from the ether, from the unknowns, right through to customer. You know what a customer's worth. You know at each step of the sales funnel what the likelihood of them moving forward in the sales funnel is. This is amazing. This is so beautiful because when let's say we ran a campaign that we did one campaign trying to drive inquiries, and we did another campaign trying to drive opportunities. Okay, and then let's say that the inquiry campaign, we were able to drive inquiries for $13, half of the funnel value. And then the opportunities, let's say it cost $1,000 for every opportunity. These are all things you get when you run campaigns and measure things, so you can have all this information and you can know, look at that, we had 50% discount in what we're spending on what we get from the inquiry and much less from the opportunity. That's information about how to spend your marketing budget and make a lot more money. It's beautiful. I'm going to leave you with this, except I'm not going to leave you with it because it's not on your tables, but it is in the PowerPoint, so if you want to download it later, you certainly can. The measurement roadmap, you don't have to read all this. It's basically, you build your sales funnel, you find out what a customer's worth, figure out what your conversion rates from each step in the funnel all the way down. And once you do that, you have to tighten up your numbers a bit, right? So where you're unsure about certain numbers, you want to tighten them up. You want to do some research and figure it out, get closer, and then use that information to make your marketing campaigns that much stronger. And then you're measuring marketing like Tom Cruise. Okay?